Welcome to Transporter. My name is David Hill. I write product documentation at Connected Data. In our last administration video, we looked at the creation of a transporter organization and the invitation of your first group of organization users. In today's scenario, we're going to pick up pretty much where that left off. What we'll see today is that pretty much all the users, I think all the users, have accepted their invitations and actually joined the organization. So all of them are marked as active now, but really only a couple of them have files up on the transporter so far. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. The point of this video is going to be to look at just some of the higher level features of the administration website and the features which are present for the administrator, which are not available to the organization users themselves. So that's what we're going to focus on. So to start, we've logged into the Transporter Management website as our organization administrator. As you can see here at the top, I'm logged in as Connected Data. And we're just going to go through the different sections. Let's start with the Transporters tab. This is where you can see any unclaimed units that are available on your network, such as this Transporter Sync. And then below that, you have units which you've actually claimed, such as our Transporter T30 here. From here, we can do a couple things. At our settings button, we have shortcuts to certain key commands, such as adding and removing shared folders, adding and removing organization users, and renaming the transporter itself. That's all pretty self-explanatory. And from here, we can drill down into the transporter's individual details and find additional options. When you're in the individual details screen for a transporter, let's start up here with the advanced menu. This gives you a few other options which are not available when you're in the settings button in the higher level screen, such as the bandwidth limits, the backup SMB share, the communication port, which is port mapping, and the unclaim option. The next obvious thing we see on this page at the top is the transporter status. We have the large green check mark that says transporter OK. This is where you would see other status messages such as offline or RAID rebuilding or something like that if you were having an issue with the transporter. To the right of that, we have important information such as the serial number, the firmware, the number of users, and the overall user limit, the date that it was first activated, and so forth. You might also want to note that the Ethernet field will tell you if you have 1 or 2 ports connected. Just below that, we have our disk usage. As you can see, this one is about 99.8% empty. We only have a few files up on it so far, and a really cool feature we have on the T30 and T15 is the disk status dialog, which will tell you the status of your individual drive bays. This is where you look if you have received the message that one of your drives needs to be replaced or rebuilt. The next thing we'll do is scroll down and look at the folders information. The list of folders when you're in the individual transporter view is a list of those folders not that are in your entire organization, but those which are on this particular transporter. Since you can own multiple pieces of transporter hardware, and you don't necessarily have to keep the same users or the same folders on each, this is important so you can see what's on each individual device. When you use the Add Remove dialog to add or remove shared folders, when you're in the transporter view, you're only adding and removing from that particular transporter. If you have multiple units, the folder will not be removed from your entire organization. And that's a very important distinction because in some instances you may want to kill the folder organization-wide, whereas in others you simply want to manage space by removing a particular shared folder from a particular piece of transporter hardware. As you can note, we have both unshared files and folders, which are your users' individual home directories, and we have a separate list for the shared folders. So you can see the types broken down. Next thing we'll do is look at the section titled Users on this device. When you claim a new transporter, by default, all organization users will be assigned to that piece of hardware, assuming that they fit and assuming that you don't deselect that option at the time of claim. So in this particular example, given that we did not change that setting in our last video, you can see that all the people we invited during the last video and who have subsequently accepted their invitations are now all marked as active members in this organization. Scroll back up and look at the Add Remove Organization Users dialog. This is similar to the folders version in that adding or removing someone here only adds or removes them from this particular transporter. It's possible that you could remove someone here and they're still assigned to a different transporter, or you could end up leaving them in sort of a limbo state in which they are present in your system but no longer have a home directory. Of course, if you do that to somebody, you need to have their files backed up first, and you would only do that in certain migration scenarios. Let's go back to our navigation bar and let's look at the Organizations tab. This is where you actually invite new members or remove members. Removing a user from your organization would actually delete them from all transporters simultaneously and remove them from your users list. You access that option right here, but we're not going to do that right now. If you look at Invite a Member, this is the familiar dialog that we covered in our last video in which we invited all of our members, so we can just leave that. Let's drill down into the individual user details and see what we have here. So when you drill down into an individual user, you can see their short name, their email address, the number of shared folders, the number of transporters on which they reside, as well as the space consumption of their individual folders. And just below that, you can see the exact names of the transporters on which they reside and shortcut back to them if you need to. Next, let's look at the shared folders view. The shared folders view gives you an overview of all the shared folders that are in your organization. So this list could actually get pretty lengthy if your users are active. It also tells you the owner of each folder, and you can sort this by name or by user. It'll default to name, and then if you click user, you can see it in this particular view, which can be handy if you're trying to evaluate a particular user's activity. Let's look at the individual details of one folder. Whenever you go into the folder view, you're going to see this red bar at the top reminding you that as the organization administrator, when you view or take actions on a particular folder, you're seeing it as a simulated view of one of your users because the organization administrator doesn't have its own individual user type profile. It's a special type of user. So anything you do in this view will in effect be proxying for another user. To that end, you have the same options here that a normal user would have, such as renaming the folder, deleting the folder, or transferring folder ownership to another organization member, or even adding and removing members via the Manage People dialog. Next, we can look at the Groups tab. The groups concept will be familiar to most of you. This just means that if you want to repeatedly invite the same groups of people over and over again, that you can create a group of those people and then just invite the group rather than having to invite individuals. It's a big time saver, and again, it's a very common concept, so there shouldn't be any surprises here. When you drill down into a group, you see its individual membership, and here by clicking on the Manage People button, you can access the list where you manage the group membership, which is pretty self-explanatory. So we'll just back out of this. One important concept is the group manager. The group manager is the person who must accept invitations to shared folders on behalf of the group. If, for instance, I invite this group to a shared folder, none of the members will be able to see that folder until the group manager first responds to the invitation and accepts it. And when you need to change the group manager, you do that right here. Anybody who's a member of the group can be the group manager. This particular group does not have any shared folders yet, but if it did, you would see them listed right here. Finally, we'll look at the Links tab. Here you'll see a list of all actively linked files that are owned by anybody in your organization. In this particular instance, the organization is still very new, and we can see that only one user has any links so far. However, even then, we can still see the two different types of links in evidence. This top one is a direct transfer link, which means it's a transporter to transporter link, and the second type is a standard link, meaning the type of link which is uploaded to our secure servers, which allows your recipients to download the file without any ancillary software. As the organization administrator, you have the same link options as the person who created the link, such as link access information. This particular link has not been viewed, but if it had, this is where you would see the number of times as well as the last 25 IP addresses. Additional IP addresses, if any, would be available in your audit logs. Another thing to point out in the administrator view is the Download Transporter Directory Connector link. This is a download link to a piece of software we developed which allows you to import Active Directory users from your Active Directory server. We have a separate knowledge base article on that, so we won't go into any detail. We hope you've enjoyed this overview of administrative features, including transporter details and status, organization management, shared folders, groups, and links. Thank you for watching.